E-commerce is a great opportunity for the small business marketer, but it's not without challenges. How do you work with overseas suppliers? How do you expand into different channels? Hi, I'm Daniel Burstein, Director of Editorial Content at MarketingSherpa. We're here at the MarketingSherpa Media Center at IRCE, and I have with me one of those successful small business marketers, Nicole Snow of Darn Good Yarn. Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into some of the ways you've overcome challenges of a small business marketer, I want to first get into, you just won a pretty prestigious award. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, FedEx has a small business grant contest, and it started about a year and a half ago. And the first year it started, there were about 4,000 small business entries, and we went off of, there were just a lot of different characteristics that winners were chosen from, and I happened to win the whole thing. So I won a $25,000 grant, which was pretty cool, and there were a couple of other runners-up, but FedEx actually brought me to IRCE to tell my story, how I use the FedEx tools, and just how I've grown a small business out of my house, essentially. We're actually moving out of my house this week, but how I've grown a business in about 4.5 years, and we've grown at a rate of 2,900% over that time period.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about what other internet retailers can learn from your growth story.
Sure.
So first of all, you're talking to me about your supply chain and how you saw an opportunity with a product that could be manufactured better, and you found some overseas suppliers. How did you do that?
So I had an importing business when I got out of the Air Force, and I had a bad job. I got fired from that, which was sort of funny. And then I said, okay, I need to sort of make a job for myself. So I had an import business, and I specialized in bringing in like women's apparel, skirts, things like that. And obviously I'm not like, master of fashion and design. So my heart wasn't totally in it. I was doing a lot of trade shows, burnt out, and I was learning how to knit at the time. And I got my hands on recycled silk yarn, which has always been commercially available, but it wasn't really done well. Like it wasn't a pretty product, but I knew that there was a potential in that. So I started to work with suppliers that I already had relationships with, and we started branching out to work with small co-ops, and we're talking the poorest areas of India and Nepal, people who are living on less than $2 a day. And I said, you know what? I can be a conduit. My business can be a conduit to give these people a job throughout the whole year, because generally with an economy in some place like Bihar, India, people are living on less than $2 a day, and it's mainly because they're dealing with agricultural season. So they're only really working 2 or 3 months out of the year. So I said, okay, I have the opportunity to take this recycled silk yarn, make it into a better product, and then also harness the power of hundreds of women who are impoverished, who deal with gender and caste discrimination, and train them to become better spinners, better dyers, everything that goes into making a hand-spun yarn, package it, market it, and bring it to market. And at first I didn't quite, it was sort of like a Fisher Price business, and I didn't, it's a lot of learning, and I tried to do things on the cheap. I'm totally self-funded. Except for the grant, I've never had any external funding. So I think in that way, it was a real benefit, because I respected every single marketing dollar. Every single test I did had to be really the right choice for me as a business. So I started off on Big Cartel, I think like a lot of really small people do, because it was cheap. It was like $10 a month, I think, to run my store. And I realized, though, that there was an opportunity to bring in more co-ops, and I had already gotten past that risk tolerance, and I think that's where a lot of small businesses get hung up. There's that risk tolerance to say, I'm going to source from overseas, how do I mitigate that risk? And I simply did it by starting small. I started from 2 boxes of yarn, and in 4.5 years my business has grown 2,900%. So it's possible, and you have to just sort of control that within your own risk tolerances. And I don't say go cash out your 401k and go wire the money and hope everything works out. For me, I'm definitely not that person.
So you started small. I mean, first of all, this is a great example of globalization. You're a small sole proprietor in Maine, right? Mm-hmm. You're working with suppliers in India and Nepal, these co-ops. Right. What were some of the challenges you were importing, exporting? What did you have to overcome?
Well, I think my favorite story is learning about weather patterns. Okay. Which is sounds sort of funny. You think we live like in the 2000s and we should know this, but I had a package actually get stuck out on a tarmac during monsoon, and it got delivered to me sopping wet, and I went, oh my goodness, that's an area of concern. So we've had to actually change our modeling and how we supply so that we're not shipping at the height of monsoon seasons. So that's something, you have to just look at where you're buying your product from. The other concerns for me, because I consider myself to really try to harness and not abuse the supply chain, because it's really people friendly, and at Darn Good Yarn, we're really proud of that fact.
Sounds like part of your value proposition is how you work with your suppliers.
It is, and it's just, it's the kind of person I am, and Darn Good Yarn is simply an expression of my creativity in that way. So it's to make sure that we are growing at a rate that is respectful to the people making the yarn, because it is a high touch item. It's not like just being a buttons press and that it's manufactured. So again, it's controlling that growth and not allowing it to just blow up. Because then you start getting abuses of supply chains and of humans in that way, and that's important to us to not make sure that doesn't happen.
Now, talking about controlling that growth you started on your own, but now you have several employees, so that's a big jump for many small businesses, getting that first, second, third employee. How did you grow that way? What did you look for, and what are your hiring advice?
So, hiring advice, I think, actually starts with the founder. At some point, you're working 16 hours a day and you're working 7 days a week, and I think we all say that you're not serving your business the way it should be served. And I stopped. I remember being in Dreamweaver making my own website, and at some point you have to say, time out, stop being so cheap, Nicole, and okay, you need to go hire someone, you can even find someone at $10 an hour, and it's still going to be better than what you do, because this is what they do all day long. So I think it's always a gut check to say that you're going to have lack of cash flow right in the beginning, but if you find people, there are people out there that want to see small businesses succeed, and I think especially with Darn Good Yarn, it has that story, and I think people attached to that because they want to do good with their extra income, when they're knitting and crocheting. That's our market. But there are individuals out there that love working with brands like Darn Good Yarn, and you just have to really seek it out, ask a lot of questions. And I think, for me, the best question I ask on an interview is, what are the top 5 things you would do with my brand? And it's really interesting to see the responses. If it's, oh, well, I just plan to do this for a summer job, well, that's probably not the right person for me. I need someone to be an ambassador and a diehard just as much as I am.
You're looking for someone who has that same socially conscious passion. That's really the heart of your brand, right? It
is. There's a social consciousness that does come with the brand, and someone does need to have that. I think that's just natural for them. If they're a caring, loving person and they're not a jerk, you're going to probably work at Darn Good Yarn. But I think just having that drive and discipline, and me not having to tell you to check emails like this way, there's no micromanagement. I mean, because I consider myself to be, at this point, a 5-year startup. Like, we get to this next level, and then we get to this next level. We've been doubling our business, our gross revenues year over year since inception. So it's a very high rate of growth, and we're doing it pretty streamlined. I mean, I have 13 employees that work for me, but we're all virtual. I have one person coming actually in-house now, but people work around the world for me, and I'm pretty proud of that business model, because I think it really is indicative of a newer economy where people are freelancing and we're piecing together a little bit more of where our paychecks are coming from. So we work with that. I've had moms work for me and they strap their kid right to them and pack orders for me. So I think as an entrepreneur, especially who might be budget conscious, one has to just sort of roll with the punches a little bit, but then just make sure people have the same ethos as you.
Then lastly, you're not just expanding as a company, you're also expanding in your online channels and how you sell online. So how did you choose what channels to expand in, and what other advice would you give to internet retailers about channel sales?
It's a great question. So for me, it links in really tightly with how to hire people. There's only so many development things and apps and all the sort of stuff that you can do as a small business owner. I chose to go on Shopify platform, because there were a lot of apps already, and the developers of these apps are hungry to make those apps work well for you. I've used Retention Grid, and within 4 months, they were able to help me tailor that app to my business, and I was able to capture an extra $45,000 in revenue. That pays mortgages for people. So, in bringing on Shopify, and then coming and bringing in solutions, saying, okay, well, let's maybe get another Shopify site for our wholesale customers, and just recreating the buying experience for my wholesale customer changes that whole part of my business, and it's grown tremendously. We brought on Amazon as another channel that we sell into. Of course, Etsy and eBay are another 2 channels that we sell on. And then the question says, okay, how do you manage the inventory? So we use Stitch Labs, and everything then streams into a centralized shipping agent when we use ShipStation. And they all work fantastic for us.
And are you still able to, because it seems like it's important to you to have that real connection to the customer and have them understand your story, you're still able to do that through these other channels?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Digital-wise, we have about 60,000 followers on Facebook.
Oh.
We have a really good time with them too. We're all pretty fanatical about the brand. We have about 60% return retail customer rate and about 95% wholesale return customer rate at Darn Good Yarn. So we're really proud of that. We do fun things. I mean, we keep it fun. Don't take ourselves too seriously. Again, it's what Darn Good Yarn has morphed into is just an expression of all of my employees' creativity. So we do yarn naming contests, keep it quirky, don't take ourselves too seriously.
I love that you look at your company and your e-commerce store as an expression of who you are. That's so cool.
Well, you have to. I mean, you put your heart and soul into it, and the moment you get too corporate, it's like you've sold out. And I think people come to me, I don't have a background in fiber. I'm an outsider coming into this world. And really my whole thing is, I love to sit back with a big glass of wine and big fat needles and knit like a scarf, and if I make a mistake, like, who cares? And there's a need for that in my market. And if I tried to be too like corporate about it, I would lose those people that are so fun to work with.
Before we go, can we see some of that Darn Good yarn?
Oh yeah, so this is some of my yarn, and it's made from, the colorful stuff is recycled silk, it's reclaimed silk, and then it's spun with a wool. And so what happens is women are able to take the raw material, bring it back to their house and spin it in their house so they can still watch their kids. And then they sell it back to my exporters, and then I import it.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nicole.
Oh, thank you so
congratulations
much.
again. And
thank you.
I mean, that's such great advice. Let's all have our e-commerce companies, our e-commerce marketing be the ultimate expressions of ourselves.
Thank you.
And you can watch many more of these videos right here from the MarketingSherpa Media Center at IRCE to improve your own e-commerce company at MarketingSherpa.com/IRCE.